Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I'll be doing a video talking about all the Star Trek books that I own that I still have to read. I did do a big long video of all the Star Trek novels that I own, and you can check that out if you want to. It's on the channel. Just search all my books Star Trek edition. But I'm going to talk about my books that on my bookshelves that I haven't read yet. From Star Trek that I intend to read. I intend to have read every Star Trek book by the end of my life. That is a tall order, I know, but I intend to because I love Star Trek. So let's get into just briefly popping out the books, tell you a little about them. Next, Star Trek Discovery novel, Desperate Hours by David Mack. I actually really enjoyed some of the books in the Discovery series, even though I do not like the TV show at all, so I'm excited to read it. I have a classic, The Lost Years, still need to read, by J.M. Dillard. Dillard wrote some of my favorite novelizations, so excited about that. Also, Alan Dean Foster, classic sci-fi fantasy author who wrote a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek. He wrote The Unsettling Stars. Very excited to get into that one. Alan Dean Foster is a institution. He really is an institution. Then we have a Keith R. A. DeCandido short story collection, Tales of the Dominion War. Not my favorite era of Star Trek, but I'm interested in reading it. There's a whole bunch of authors that contributed, which I can't get into, but very interested in reading this one. I got this signed. Then I have Imzadi, also signed by Peter David, one of probably the single best-selling Star Trek novel, one of the top-reviewed Star Trek novels, a lot of Star Trek fans' favorite novel. I'm going to read it eventually. I just keep putting it, off on my TBR. Then I have two books from the Cold Equations trilogy, Silent Weapons and The Body Electric by David Mack. David Mack writes such great books, and I really enjoyed the first book that I read back in January. Just haven't gotten around to them, but I intend to read these eventually. Then we have the book Vendetta by Peter David. Lauded author, heard good things about this book. It's called The Giant Novel. It's not that long, but they called it The Giant Novel, so I'm intrigued to read this one. I know at the time the Star Trek books were shorter at the time, so I understand that. Then we have Federation, which I've heard nothing but good things about. I've heard this is what Star Trek VII should have been. Generations should have been this book. So, and then we have the four books in the Vanguard series. Precipice by David Mack. Declassified, a novella collection by Dayton Ward, Kevin Dillmore, Marco Palmieri, who was the editor on the series, and David Mack. Then I have When Judgments Come by Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore. And then I have Storming Heaven, the final book by David Mack. And they need to release the novella that they did at the end by David and Ward. They need to release that in paperback. Then I have a TOS novel, Child of Two Worlds, by Greg Cox. I've read two books by Greg Cox, and I loved them both. Then I have Jeffrey Lang. I've read two books by him. One of them I thought was fine. The other one I thought was actually very well done. So I'm intrigued to read this one. Then I have Imzadi 2 by Peter David. I've heard not good things about this one, so I'm a little bit nervous. This becomes the love triangle of them instead of just the romance of the two characters. They add in a third, Worf. Then we have a very battered version of Hollow Men from the Dominion War from the DS9's series by Una McCormick. I've read some books by Una that I loved, and then one book that was like, yeah. Another Peter David book, Q Squared. It's got Q in it, obviously, and Discount Lightsabers. Then we've got some more Keith DeCandido books, A Burning House from the Klingon Empire, and IKS Gorkin Honorbound, Book 2. He's a great author. He's great at writing the Klingons, so you put the two together. I'm really excited about it. I wish that Keith DeCandido and John Jackson Miller would write a big origin story for the Klingons. That's my goal. That's my hope in Star Trek. My tower is starting to become the Leaning Tower. Let's see if I can get it done before it falls. I have two Titan novels. I have Titan Sight Unseen by James Swallow, one of my favorite authors, and Titan Fallen Gods by Michael A. Martin. Now, this is Michael A. Martin's bread and butter, is the Titan novels, because he and Andy Mangels started this series, so I'm interested in reading it. Also love I'm excited for Sight Unseen because it connects somehow to some of John Jackson Miller's novels. And also, James Swallow is just a terrific Star Trek author. Then the last book on my list is Force and Motion by Jeffrey Lang. Jeffrey Lang is, I've talked about him before, and this is the first time that a cover blurb combination hooked me to buy the book. Not because I'm excited about the characters involved necessarily, and not because I'm particularly interested in DS9, but because this cover is just gorgeous. And I read the blurb and I was like, that is interesting. So I bought it. So that is all of the books that I have from Star Trek that I still need to read. It's a lot, obviously, but I'm going to read them eventually. So if you're like, oh, Jonathan, you need to read this book, and it's in this list, don't worry, I already own it. If there's a book that you think, oh man, you should really read that I haven't talked about, that I did not include in this list, I probably don't own it. So leave me that suggestion. And then also, if there's a book in here that you love and you want to talk about, or you hate and you have to talk about it, let me know. I'd love to talk about these books with you in the comments section. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.